Hi y'all, this is the Losman here, and I'm basically doing another of my weekly Roundup videos where I discuss the movies that I've watched in the past week and other events that are going on. Now, this past week, I did focus on some movies that have been on my watch list that are not getting enough attention. So, I'm going to go ahead and dive in, and we're going to start with the first movie, which is Amityville: The Awakening. Now, going back to 1979 when I was much younger, the Amityville Horror was one of the most influential movies of its day. For those of you who are too young to have witnessed this, it was basically like the Blair Witch Project or The Exorcist for those of you who are older than I am. The Amityville Awakening is a movie that was made about 4 years ago, directed by, I believe it was, well, I don't have the director's name right here, but it does star Jennifer Jason Leigh and Bella Thorne. The plot of the story involves a family moving into the famous house on Long Island in the city of Amityville. Now, the Amityville horror does come up in this movie, obviously, because it has Amityville in the title. What's going on is that the main character, the daughter, teenage daughter, has a twin brother who is bedridden, and it was after an accident where he is basically in a vegetative state. The mother moved them as well as a younger sibling to the house to get them closer to a doctor who was good with those sort of medical conditions. Now, the movie does take place in a universe where the Amityville horror movies do exist. They do because they do mention the first movie and the sequel and the remake, and they operate under the idea that the story may or may not be true, which is one of the reasons why the Amityville horror is so popular because it scared the crap out of people. And I mean, even when I was a kid in 1979, it scared the crap out of people. I am not one who believes in the story. I honestly believe that it was a huge money making scheme by the Lutz family, but maybe we'll discuss that in another future episode. However, Amityville Awakening, I will say this: there are about 20 movies in the Amityville horror series, and you know what? This one isn't the worst. It's actually not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Bella Thorne actually does a pretty good job playing the teenager who is concerned for the safety of her brother and the history of the house as she learns, from her new friends, especially about what's going on there. And so, if you want to check out Amityville Awakening, go ahead and check it out. It's not a bad movie. I will say this: it's better than many of the remakes, and I think it would be probably even better than the remake, which came out with Ryan Reynolds, because this one was I thought it was a little more entertaining. Now, the second movie I checked out was a movie that has long eluded me. It is Stir of Echoes, featuring Kevin Bacon. Now, Stir of Echoes came out in 1999. And strangely, it was the same year as the Blair Witch Project. Stir of Echoes is a movie about a working class man who discovers that after hypnotism session, he can suddenly get visions, and these visions are of a young girl. And he begins to inquire what's going on, and he discovers that this young girl was basically had disappeared months before. And in the course of the movie, the clues lead him to her possible, location. Now, this movie was based on a book written by Richard Matheson. Now, Richard Matheson has written some outstanding books in his day, and basically, it's one you want to check out. I know it's been over 20 plus years since its release, and it was definitely a movie that I had intended to catch all these years. It's a great movie. You can find it on a number of streaming clients out there, and it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, Kevin Bacon puts out a really good performance in that movie. And even though it came out the same year as the Blair Witch Project, and was overshadowed by The Sixth Sense as well, it's a damn good movie. It's one of the best ghost movies of the past 20 years, and it's definitely one worth checking out. Now, the next group of movies I watched were more obscure movies from the 1970s. The first one being The Red Queen Kills Seven Times. Now, that one is a giallo movie that was strangely enough, it was filmed in English. No, actually, it was filmed in Germany in Italian. The plot concerns two sisters who, who are shown at a young age they basically are kind of rivals. You have the good sister and the bad sister, and over the course of the the movie jumps ahead 20 years or so. You find out that the sisters are older and that something has happened to one of the sisters, and that there's a curse involved that the grandfather is afraid will befall upon his granddaughters. It's an interesting story. I mean, it's a movie I had never heard of. It is a giallo, so it is a Italian crime thriller style movie, but it has a little different element to it. So it's definitely something you might want to check out. It's a little different. It's not your usual giallo movie, but it does incorporate some pretty good imagery. And it's set in a castle, and it's quite an interesting movie. The next movie I rented was one called Weekend Murders. Now, this one was a little different. It was a giallo movie. I will tell you this: it was filmed in England, and it was in English, so it was one of those movies from the early '70s. I don't know if it was. I think it was. I don't know if it was an Amicus movie or one of those movies, but no, actually, no. You know what? This may have been an Italian production, but filmed in England in English, which is kind of odd. It is a little different because it is a giallo comedy. I know it's kind of strange to think of a giallo as somewhat funny, and this movie is kind of a little funny. It involves a group, an English aristocrat who passes away, and a group of his relatives come out to the will reading to find out what they have, what they're going to inherit. And along the way, you discover that someone isn't too happy with what they got and begins to kill other family members, hoping to get a bigger piece of the pie. It is, like I said, it is a bit of a comedy. I mean, not outright comedy, but there are some funny aspects to the story, and bumbling characters. Like it does feature kind of an idiot policeman, which is something you tend to see in a lot of giallo movies, and you kind of get a little bit of a detective story in there, because that's what it is. It's a giallo, and it's a bit, yeah, and as a detective story, the whodunit aspect is actually pretty neat. It's a good story. I mean, it's well, once you get past the silliness of the story, it's actually not bad. Pretty cool. Now, you do have another movie here. This one is called Asylum. This one came out in the early '70s, so if you're going to look for it, look for the one from the early '70s. It is a anthology story, and it was one of two anthology stories that I watched this week. This one basically has a couple of stories involving a doctor, a psychiatrist, who takes a job in a mental facility, and he basically is interviewing four different patients, and each of the stories is presented in anthology format, with each of the patients detailing why they're in the facility. It is a very interesting story. The tales are kind of unique and different. They all involve basically the patients, living a normal life and just what drove them to madness. Now that movie is it has some creepy elements to it. I remember when I watched the fourth story, there was this creepy little mechanical doll that I had seen in some other pictures, and I thought, oh, this is that movie. So that was pretty interesting to find out. So yeah, this one's called Asylum. The other movie, or one of the last movies I did watch, or the horror movies that is, was a movie called Dead of Night. Now, Dead of Night is a common title you'll find in a number of horror movies. This particular one is from the '70s, and it is anthology. It was actually more like a television anthology. I mean, may very well have been a television anthology. It presents three tales. One of the tales is terrifying. Another one is suspense, and the other one is kind of a time travel story. It's kind of a it kind of reminded me of a show called Amazing Stories, or maybe not quite the Twilight Zone. Well, yeah, maybe a little bit of the Twilight Zone, but just three stories that involve one involves time travel, another involves a vampire, and and you also have another story in there. So it was an interesting story. I mean, interesting tale. Like I said, it was a movie I found that I'd never heard of, and I just put it on, because I couldn't find anything to watch that night, and it wasn't too bad. It was interesting. Had some people I recognized. It was made in the late '70s, so it did feature one or two famous people back when in the early days. Now, the last two movies that I watched this weekend, A little different here. I have been watching the Marvel movies, and over the course of the past, was it 9, 10 years that they've been releasing them. However, lately I've been falling behind, and I decided to catch up with Ant-Man and Wasp because I need to watch Captain Marvel and I need to watch the you know the latest Avengers movie. Now, of course, most people know Ant-Man and Wasp. It's basically Paul Rudd returning to play the Ant-Man character, and you have Evangeline Lilly and Michael Douglas returning their roles as well. It was entertaining. I remember watching the first Ant-Man movie in a few years ago when it came out, and I liked the lighthearted story. The hero was kind of like I mean, he's a good guy, got in a little trouble, did some bad things, but generally a good guy, and he's has the right intentions, and he's got the cutest little daughter ever. I mean, she's adorable. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love this movie, because his daughter was just the perfect little angel. Just great movie. And so I'm gonna have to look out for Captain Marvel next, because I do want to watch the Avengers movie, pretty soon, or at least before it comes out on Blu-ray or streaming services, so I can watch it on the big screen. The last movie I watched, actually not a movie, it's a miniseries. Earlier this past month, HBO began showing a presentation on, or a miniseries on Chernobyl. Now, the events of Chernobyl are obviously in my lifetime. It happened in 1986, and if you're a little too young to remember what happened or know what happened, basically in a city called, or in an area called Chernobyl, in what is now northern Ukraine, a nuclear power plant suffered a catastrophic incident where basically they had a near meltdown, and it caused a lot of problems. I mean, basically radiation was leaked. I mean, the core was exposed, and the movie basically details the history, the events, and it does so in a manner to show the reasons why it happened. This is in the midst of the Cold War. You have the Soviet Union basically pushing people to compete with the West, and nuclear power was seen as the future, because it was seen as a cheap and clean way to generate electricity. However, because it's nuclear power, there are the dangers involved, and that's what happened with Chernobyl. A lot of bad things happened, and to this day, that region of the Ukraine is basically uninhabitable. What I do like about this movie is you will find aspects of the story that are quite horrific. I mean, it's like watching a horror movie. You see some blood, gore, and some really gross things, because exposure to radiation is not nice, and you do see the problems with the bureaucracy of the Soviet Union. Scientists basically trying to get answers, and then they're dealing with politicians who obviously don't give a rat's ass. I mean, obviously these are people who would rather save face than admit that that there might be a problem. And this is a really good miniseries. I mean, I've watched the first 2 episodes this weekend, and I'm gonna watch the rest of them as they progress on. And I mean, it's got a great cast and a great story. I know that they dramatize some of the events, but generally the story is what it is, and it's. I mean, if you really want to look into the story of Chernobyl, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there that can really give you a good summary of the events. But let's just say that it was a very scary moment. I mean, I still remember it. I was about 15 years old. No, actually about 14 years old when it happened. So it was definitely something that was a major event in my life. So it's definitely worth checking out. Now, the last thing I wanted to bring up, or actually the next thing I want to bring up here, is I'm going to be doing something new here. I'm still going to be doing these weekly videos here where I do a roundup of the movies that I'm watching as part of my 300 watch challenge, as well as upcoming events that are going to occur. But another thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting out a weekly or semi-weekly video for a movie that I've watched, or a movie that I enjoyed. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be something I've watched recently. And the first movie is the movie Phoenix Forgotten, and I've already posted it on my YouTube channel. So yeah, I have a YouTube channel, by the way. So yeah, obviously if you're watching this, then you know it. And that one's put together by myself and my brother Rob. He is going to be helping me put the videos together. He's a television editor, works for a an Austin television station, so he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's really good. He's going to take the videos that I do, cut them up, put some graphics in them, put some pictures in them, make them look prettier, clean them up, because this particular video that I'm doing right now is going to be purely impromptu. I mean, so it's going to have gaffes, it's going to have me, making mistakes, me going a lot and little clicks and things like that. But that's part of why I got to do this movie. This video. It's just meant for fun, something entertaining, something just to cap off my week. But the other series is going to be a little more polished and cleaned up, and over time, I'm sure it's going to look a little bit better though as I get better, as I improve upon my storytelling technique and going through the descriptions and telling about the movies I watched. Now, like I said, the first movie is going to be Phoenix Forgotten. The next movie I will let you know beforehand is The Descent. As you can see right there, I've got it sitting right there. I think that's what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to give you a little sneak preview of the movie that's going to be coming up soon by putting it right there in the little shelf. And that way I can give people an idea of something to look forward to. Now, another movie I'm going to be doing is going to be a movie called You're Next. So we'll get to that eventually. So, we'll get around to doing that. And to check out those videos, that's going to be on my YouTube channel. You can go look for it. It's going to be under the Losman 94. And you can probably find the link at the end of this video. And you can also find it on my webpage, which is thelosman.com, or my blog page, which is basically linked onto my homepage. And I will start putting more items on my blog. It's been kind of, not keeping up with the blog lately, but I'm going to start putting stuff up as we approach Halloween. I'm going to put some lists up there and some little articles, that tie into some, Halloween-related items and some film-related things, because I do like putting lists together and grouping movies together so that people can, find things to watch. I mean, ultimately, that's the reason why I have my Twitter and why I'm doing these is to get more people to watch movies and to let them know, hey, there's more than just the Freddy, Jason, and Michael movies out there. There's quite a collection of great films out there, and most of the time you may not have heard of them, but they're definitely ones you want to go ahead and check out. So obviously, that's what I want to do. So that's why I'm doing these videos, to reach out to people, let them know, hey, there's a lot of good stuff out there. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and cap this off, and I want you to go ahead and check out the movies that I talked about on my list, and check out my homepage. Check out my Twitter page. I've got Instagram. Everything's going to be under Losman94, or you can find the links to everything there. And then, of course, I want you all to subscribe here. There's going to be a subscribe button that comes up pretty soon. That way, you can keep track of my updates and videos. I'm going to be doing one of these every week, and I'm going to be doing the other video series probably every week or 2 weeks, depending on how long it takes to put the videos together. And of course, I'll put on some occasional other videos there. If I go to a movie premiere, or if I, at someplace interesting, like if at the Texas Frightmare Weekend, or I'm at another convention, I'll throw up some extra videos up there to let you know what's going on. So I'm going to be also coming up with a cool catchphrase to say at the end of these videos to make it a little, more interesting. I think it's going to be something along the lines of, that was the lowdown with the Losman. All right, y'all take care.